Well, Brad, it seemed a really opportune time to catch hold of you and get your thoughts. The way that the run-in is set up at the football club now it's a great time to just catch up and reflect on things. I mean, how are you feeling at the moment?
Yeah, it's maybe a touch more grey hairs. I'm 16 years now in the football club, so probably a few more grey hairs. But it's going to be an exciting probably 4 to 5 weeks.
16 years is quite some time to be at the helm of any football club. How do you reflect on that time sitting here now?
Depends who you ask. Depends if you ask me, if you ask my wife, lots of people. I always kind of break the time at the football club probably into two elements. It's 16 years at the end of this year, bar 1 year where I got interrupted with COVID, which I'm sure we'll touch on, which kind of 5 years ago seems a lifetime. But yeah, the first real 8 years were the first 5 years we're getting involved with the football club, with Jason Ainsley and Bobby Beasley for the Sins. I'm not from Spennymoor, I'm from Easington Lane. But County Durham, so it was a big thing with us being a kind of born and bred County Durham boy. The first 8 years were the mix between really the first 5 years in the Northern League, then 3 years taking promotion and going through really the two leagues through the kind of what was the Northern Premier League, kind of probably East and the Northern Premier League. So I'd probably break it into 2 8-year kind of spells.
What was it then, if you weren't a Spennymoor lad, obviously, what was it that drew you to the club in the first place? Was it the Ainsley connection, or what was it?
I'd always lived in County Durham, but I've very rarely ever worked here. My young early days was kind of sitting on the board of PLCs from kind of young mid-20s, which meant I lived in the North East, but I was never here. I was always an aspiring footballer and unfortunately had to pack in with an injury when I was 19-year-old. So football's always been a passion. And then, I then went into Cheshire and I sat as a main board member for the likes of the Cordwell Group, which was Phones for You. People might know, I was a group MD there for nearly 25 years ago now. But I then got involved with Hetton Lions for me Sins on a Sunday morning, mainly because of the time and the commitment of travel. I didn't have the time. I was travelling around the world. I was heavily involved with business. My wife never ever saw us. But I wanted to get involved with football without the commitment of contracts and training. So I got involved with Hetton Lions on a Sunday morning.
And then the step up to Spennymoor, and this football club over the 16 years of being here has undergone a dramatic facelift, and that's not just on the pitch, it's off the pitch and everything, isn't it? Yeah,
and Hetton Lions probably brought that, because when I started with Hetton Lions, again, they had no changing facilities, had no field, and Sunday morning, the North East, going back 99-2000, it was a real strong area, with your Peterlee Catholic clubs and your Framlegate Moors and your Plains Farms, and it was real Stockton Roads with big standard, and very few players then would sign contracts because they wanted to play on a Saturday and play on a Sunday morning. And from my early days, it's 16, 17, 18, playing for Peterlee Catholic Club and Hetton Squash Tech and Fram, I already knew what it was about, the standard. So I got involved in the Lions. Again, incredible times, brought over 60 trophies. Hetton and Easington Lane was obviously where I was from, so I was an Easington Lane lad, but Hetton was kind of, where I went to school, and, we were within a mile of each other. So doing the local area proud, and again, we look at the record books, but, we won the FA Sunday Cup 4 times within 8 years, 3 times with Anfield, one was at Stadium of Light. So putting Hetton and Easington Lane and where I was from on the map, but it reached its kind of conclusion as to what it could do, and we wanted to end it on a high, which we did. And for the Sins, I'd kind of then had a long spell with Jason. So I'd already been with Jason as a player. We had all the best players really playing for us. And I decided then through, even though I had lots of offers to get involved with other clubs, I got involved with Spennymoor, mainly on the back of Spennymoor United, then Town, and they'd had a tough period. I'd helped them out in the FA Vars run before I got involved back in 2008. And I met a guy called Billy Beasley along with Jason, and there was a real concern that Spenny would go out of business fully. And because it was a County Durham club, it was one of 5 or 6 clubs who I felt had a real good reputation in good, solid, non-league club. I got back involved in 2009 for the first time in a Saturday club.
And when you first stepped through the door, obviously the club was in jeopardy at the time, but what were the priorities? What were things on your to-do list at the time, if you can remember some of them?
Can we have 11 hours for the interview? Yeah, well, I think the first thing is anybody who sees the Brewery Field today, and bear in mind, this, I don't own this, this is owned by the town council, but, anybody who comes to the Brewery Field, and the tens of thousands of people who I probably know from football and business who come here now just can't believe it's the same place. Yeah. So one is that the place was in total disrepair. The field was in an awful condition. We had 2 or 3 areas that were fenced off that couldn't be used. We had a wall falling at the back. We had floodlights that were about to basically be scrapped. We had 2 modular buildings that were burnt out at either side of the ground, and the club owed substantial money inside the town as well to lots of small businesses who would not get involved with the football club. So I got involved because...
So a lot then.
So it was a lot. However, it wasn't a shock. I knew that when I came in. Billy was clear about it, Billy Beasley, with Jason. They were crystal clear what the challenges were, but also they gave a commitment that if I got involved, they would obviously help and support the best they could, which they did.
And lots of football fans at every club probably won't see the nuts and bolts of what go on day to day. Those kinds of problems there are all infrastructure side of things. What is most important to football fans is what's happening on the green stuff out there on a Saturday, and you very quickly managed to have an impact there as well.
Yeah, I mean, the thing was with Hetton Lions, I had a major link into the best players really in the North East, because I always say the best players who played for Hetton Lions were all representing the best clubs in the North East. But ultimately they wouldn't sign a contract because they're playing for Hetton Lions on a Sunday. So we had players from Gateshead, we had players from all sorts of players, Spennymoor, we had players from everywhere playing for us. And when I did take over, the plan very much was, I knew for at least 5 years we wouldn't take promotion because of the state of the ground. We had no academy, we had no ladies, we had no real facilities, there was major infrastructure. And the other issue that we had was that, the higher you go up, the more from a wage, from a cost, from a ground, it's a big thing. So there was quite a lot of criticism the first 5 years, which I could understand, they just want to be big fish in a small pond. We didn't. We actually, the brief was we wanted to kind of win everything at that level, which we won the league 4 out of 5 years. The year we didn't win it, Darlington won it, and deservedly so. But we won the FA Vars and we won the County Cup and the League Cup that year. The aim was to win every competition at least once, and we won the league 4 out of 5 years, and we averaged over 100 points, which again was an incredible achievement. But unseen was the work going on in the background about getting the infrastructure right. So working on things like the pitch, working on the ground, starting to put a lot of that cost in. And I was still running big businesses in Cheshire, so it was a massive football link. They used to always kind of would have a bit of fun with us and tell us we were running pub teams in the North East, we wouldn't take promotion, and at what point we were going to get in the big leagues and compete. So the first 5 years were very much around infrastructure and getting us where we needed to be.
And looking back now, in terms of if you were filling in a report card about the first 16 years, what would it be? Have you exceeded the ambitions that you set out to at the start? Have you matched what you were hoping to be able to achieve?
I think it's always difficult because I think which we'll touch when we get further through the conversation about when you look at a football club, you go there, whoever you are, and it isn't my football club. It's been here before me and it'll be here after me. So you're a custodian of the football club. So it's about doing things right and never losing sight that your supporters, as big or as small as they are your football club. Look at Darlington, the work them guys have done. Look at Chester City, lots of clubs, and it might be their club, but they don't have to do it, and you look at what it means to them. So I think from that point of view, the real thing for myself was really getting the club ready for the next step, which we did. But I then look back at the support I had at the time, because at the time there was things like when we put in the stands, and we did a lot of the work, not the final work, which probably went around the back end of the Premier League first kind of season of the National North we'll touch on, but I had support on disabled toilets. I remember Neil Foster came at the time, because Labour at the time had a majority, and came and helped to help us there. Ian Geldard was heavily involved then. He came and helped us with the floodlights, which again were major things. But I go back at the time, the town at the time actually did have a majority owner in place, and I do feel that actually that made the difference, because the floodlights were key to get promotion, the disabled toilets were absolutely key, and these were all things alongside what I'd actually start putting significant sums in, as well as signing a 50-year deal with the town council with covenants on that could never be built on unless there was criteria for a facility elsewhere, and also peppercorn rent, which we then would look after all the repairs and renewals, but it was 50 year, of which we're 5 years in, to protect the club for the long term.
And that's important, isn't it? Because, you know, like you've said there, so many football clubs these days at all levels run into trouble, but you've obviously got that passion, you've got that understanding that football fans own their football club in certain ways.
And also, it doesn't matter where you are in the country, you know, your big challenge is always, how are Newcastle doing, how are Sunderland doing, how are Middlesbrough doing, you know, and you look at that journey from the first five, then moving into, if you like, the Northern Premier, that is East now, before the Northern Premier League, your travel costs go up, your wage cost goes up, your ground requirements go up, you know, but at the same time, you know, what is happening in the region and the county is so important, because if Sunderland's having a bad time and Newcastle's having a bad time, the chances are you'll pick up that support. You know, they're more likely to come if everything's going great. You know, we know right up to today, based on where they're playing and what they're doing, will have an impact on the football club. You know, and also we played in black and white. You know, as people will tell you from Easton Lane, I was a born and bred black and white from a very young age. Not because we were any good. You know, it was Kenny Wharton and, you know, George Riley and Billy Whiter. So I didn't jump on a bandwagon. But I got reminded all the time about being a black and white, and I get, you know, we have some fun now. Oh, you're a black and white club? We absolutely not. Probably it's 50-50 in the town. I haven't been to Newcastle over 20 years. I couldn't think of anything worse. The Premier League and where we are. Non-league is far more interesting to me, but we want to appeal to, and we have to everybody. But the town has 22,000 people. It's a small population.
It's a small population, but they're very proud people, and over the time you've been here, they've obviously had such success, and those triumphant times in the Vars in 2013, the promotions you've got. I mean, what moments stand out for you? What moments put the hairs on the back of your neck up when you think about them?
Yeah, lots. I remember even when we won the league, I think it might have been the fourth time, and we were 1-0 down v Dunstan with not long left, and we won the game 2-1. I always remember Stephen Richardson, Speedy, and you know through stats I've got a bad memory, Mark. But we didn't deserve to win that game, but that actually then got us up through the league. I still remember times when Glenn Taylor scored, you know, against Chorley for Stockport County. You know, the impact that had on non-league football that day, which has never been forgotten there. The Vars, you know, going to the Vars in 2013, you know, I remember the amount of people who said to me, look, if I die tomorrow, I'm pretty comfortable, because I never thought I'd ever see my club, one, at Wembley, and two, actually winning at Wembley. You know, we have lost a lot of people on the journey. Where I look back at people who I got involved with in 2009, a lot of people who are not with us anymore, people who massively helped here, who are now in maybe not good health. And I never forget the people who came and, you know, got diggers to help us dig out the ground, who basically helped with sponsorship. You know, we've had a lot of people who've supported the club, and hopefully that 2013, you know, really, you know, give people something they probably never ever thought we'd do.
Yeah, because this football club is about the people, isn't it? And non-league football as a whole is about that.
And I think every football club is. I think in non-league, and that's why, you know, I'm passionate for the North East to do well. I want Darlington to do well. I want Hartlepool to do well. I want Shields to do well. Gateshead to do well. All these clubs, because the better they're doing, we're not travelling, which we'll touch on. We're not travelling the distance we do now. You know, this year, the club will have done nearly 3,000 miles in the league. And when we had the cup competitions in, of going to Sutton, there and back, and then, you know, we've got a Wembley trip, and then we've had Rochdale, and then we've had Hampton and Richmond, then we had Alfred, and you put that all together, we'll had 5,000 miles of travel. As you know, forgetting the lads playing, which I'll touch on, over 60 times a season, including pre-season, they're part-time. You know, but you know, the fans make the club, and I think the non-league, you know, as a whole, yeah, there's the rivalry, but I think everybody deep down is from a similar culture in non-league.
And this club has evolved now, obviously a well-respected and established member of National League North. How proud does that make you to feel that Spennymoor are rubbing shoulders with some of the clubs that now find themselves in this tier of football.
Yeah, and I think when we said the two kind of 8-year periods, your first 5 in the Northern League, the 3-year in the Northern Premier, some great battles with Darlington, and I remember losing the playoff to Darlington, but some real great games, and the amount of times we brought record crowds against someone like Darlington, the fans they brought and the atmosphere. But that 3-year again was far more travel, far challenging, better football clubs in history, maybe bigger budgets, but then known fine well that after the 5 years of getting the infrastructure in, we wanted to get through the leagues as quick as we could. We got kind of 2 and 3 year, and then suddenly after 8 years we're in National North, and we start with the game against Stockport. Which I remember Jason, who's kind of been fundamental with us from day one, and he is Mr. Spennymoor, and Leslie will blame him 100% alongside Billy Beasley for me being involved with Spennymoor. But we look, and I always remember that fixture and Jason coming and thinking, wow, But then I always remember Foley's goal, in that game, and beating them on that day 1-0. Where Foley cut in and scored an absolute wonder goal. But that really then brought the club to a different challenge, because suddenly, you were competing then against, the Northern League and Northern Premier had real established non-league, real top clubs, but the National North, you're suddenly getting into a totally different ballgame. Yeah. The National North, which clearly people, I've run logistics businesses worldwide, and people clearly don't know what the North is, because the North that I look at today, and in my 8 years, is never the North that I knew. Because when you start looking, we absolutely should have in the National, there should be 3 leagues, which we'll touch on. There should be a North, a South, and a Midlands. But the travel alone is a major challenge, not just for Spennymoor. Blythe had it far harder than us, because they were further north. South Shields have it up now. They might be full time, but they still travel further. Darlington doing it. It is horrendous. It's not just about Spennymoor. It's like you're looking to go into Needham Market or Oxford City or Brackley. And I talk to business people, investors who I know, and they go, "Oh, where is that this one?" I'll go, "Brackley." They go, "I thought you were in the north." So I think that journey was then getting into, from the Northern League, doing what we did, doing the 3 years, then moving into the North, and then having considerable improvements again in the ground to deal with bigger, more established clubs who are, fundamentally enormous clubs who have had great history in the Football League.
What have been the big challenges from you, from an organisation perspective, to keep this club afloat at this level for so long now? I
think the first 8 years were very much focused on the first team. But there was other things going on, the starting, which we'll touch on when we talk about the kind of, the current on where we are today. But when we start thinking about 10 years ago, he's starting to get the Spenny Youth underway with Ryan Murray, and I've had people like Andy Lowe, but I started again, similar story to Henton Lions. We're doing everything here, so we've got a great brand, but the youth basically had, there was a couple of teams from Byers Green or different areas, but they had no facilities, we then moved them to Tudor. We had no changing facilities, we had no toilets. My ground staff had to cut all the pitches, which again is a substantial cost. Then through that period, you're starting to put other things to the football club, which I'll touch on. But that was the start of, it's not just about 11 people playing football on the Saturday. It's starting to think of the youth, starting to think of the community, starting to think of maybe ladies, starting to think of the academy, starting to have that vision to think, actually, when we get into the National North, which we're in at this point, you're competing against clubs who have actually been in League 1, League 2. Scunthorpe's a good example today. They were playing Sunderland 10, 12 years ago. You look at people in our league, your Darlingtons today, your Chester Cities, your Herefords, your Scunthorpes. You work your way around, forgetting the travel of these are Chester City. We're competing against ex-Football League and cities with a 22,000 population.
Yeah, and obviously you've touched on the community thing there. When I first started the football club, that was one thing that struck me as being, my first conversation I had with you was just how important that side of things was in embedding this football club, making sure it is at the heartbeat of our town. Yeah,
I think, look, it's like anything in life. You will always have an element of jealousy, you'll have an element of criticism, but I think in non-league, 95% of people are good people who actually might think, oh, we such and such run my club or what have you. But I think as a whole, we all kind of, it's like one, I always say the non-league is a good family where you will look at the messages since the weekend from far and wide. But the big thing for me would always be in this town is you've got 22,000 people. The ground is landlocked. We haven't got 3G here. We haven't got, on Saturday is a perfect example. We're competing against Rochdale. Bar 2 years, they've been in the Football League for over 100 years. They've just been taken over by multi-billionaires. They've got a 10,500 capacity ground. They've got a population of 230,000, and they've got the councils on board. Well, actually, we've got to have far more to this football club than just the Saturday, because a good example, which we'll touch on, the modular. We talk about the modular facility and what we've done on the ground. It's been used 15 Saturdays this season. In a time when hospitality and everything's tough, you can't have a facility that operates 15 times on a Saturday across a season.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about that in terms of the size of our football club and the organisation. How have we managed to establish ourselves? What have been the key things that we've had to do?
Well, I think you can answer that yourself, Mark. You've been in Barrow, you've been in Hartlepool as a kind of legend there from a PR media. But you have, and I got my references before we kind of brought you in. But I always deemed, and the comment I got with you is, you're a proper football lad. How have you found the football club? Me going back to you, and you've been in far bigger established clubs. How have you found the organisation?
Well, the organisation here is superior to what it is at Barrow, and what I believe it still is at Barrow. Because there's a real hunger to try and improve the infrastructure as well as the football. Some clubs get lost, I think, in just being football, whereas here I feel like there is a bit of a focus on having that blend, which ultimately then can have an impact on the football side as well.
Yeah, and also the clubs here has been heavily supported for myself right the way through to this season, but which we'll touch on, that support is less than it ever has been. But there's still a lot to go, and that's never ever going to just happen on a Saturday in the National North without anything else. So the importance of everything around the town and the infrastructure is absolutely key, because I keep going back. We have a town of 22,000 people, and our ground and facilities today can't operate 52 weeks of the year, 7 days a week, which you're competing. And you'll see in umpteen examples now across the country, town councils, county councils getting behind clubs on new facilities, building new grounds, 3G, mixed use. There's all sorts of projects going on where people realise the impact and the importance of, the football isn't just about the football, it's everything else it reaches, which is why we have to have far more strings. But where we are today, there'll be only so much we can do.
Yeah, you've talked about that, and I know something for the future we'll probably touch on further down, but in terms of that support and just message to people who to get involved, because you've been here 16 years, you've done a lot of it yourself, you've had some support along the way. Could there be more?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think this football club now is really at a pivotal kind of crossroads as to where it is. And the reason I say that is that we are 16 years in, and I think one of the things that you always have to do is when you join a football club and you leave a football club, you make sure that when you leave it was in a far better place than you found it. Now, through my journey, I've far too many people to mention, of people who've helped along the way, the amount of volunteers. I look at the board today, Bobby sits as a guy from Ferry Hill, we're local links as a volunteer, but generates as much as he can. Deborah, who's been with us for years now, who does her own legal side and tries to help. Tony Wilson, Tony came in as MD to help and support as well with what he does. Forgetting Ian and some of the other team who are full-time here, who do an incredible job, but there's lots of volunteers, people who sit in finance functions in my group of companies and other areas, support and help. So there's a lot there, but for this club really to move to the next level, which I'll touch on, we're going to need more, and we'll need new investors, we'll need new people who can bring some property ideas, we'll need different things to come to support the football club, because of some of the points I've earlier kind of raised, that we are not a Rochdale, we are not a Darlington on a fan base, we're not a South Shields. And if you look at our fan base, we'll look and think, the crowds are great, 12 or 13, and the truth is, as a percentage of population, Spenny are doing incredibly well. Could we get more? Absolutely. There's nothing more frustrating when you see buses of Sunderland or Newcastle leaving the town, not backing us, but I get that, and that's their choice. But when you look at our 12 or 13 or 1400, we do 350 to 400 tickets for the youth, and that's absolutely right, that are donated, and the coaches, because they're the next generation of supporters. Then we have 400 to 500 season ticket holders. So when you start looking and you break that down, you might have 3-4 ground hoppers or people coming in and out the area. So we've got to come with more innovative and different streams, which from a sponsor side, we have a great model. But then now, if you look at the football club, we have the youth programme with 400 children at Whitworth, which we were fundamentally getting the grant. Academy, we've got over 30 children now with New College Durham and with Billingham, who are now moving into year 3 next year when we recruit more assets coming through. We've got a community team running 52 weeks of the year, delivering 5,000 meals for the elderly, let's say. Then you've got the ladies team who've had, great progression through the leagues and the great FA Cup run they had. But look at Spenny Youth as well. A good example would be, I look back to my youth days and how passionate I was, captain of Eppleton Juniors under 18 with people like Paul Kitson. We beat Spennymoor in the final of the County Cup. How proud I was. Look at our youth programme here. Tomorrow night, you've got the Durham County Cup, which I look back, them years as under 18 captain, our team to beat Spenny. We've got Spennymoor under 18s playing Spennymoor under 17s. So, what an achievement. So when you look at the youth programme now, 400 children actually in the town, at Whitworth, in the area. So you look at everything we've done. So whether it be the ladies, the academy, the youth, the community, it's absolutely key. This isn't about 14, 15 people playing football on a Saturday 15 times a year at the Brewery Field.
Absolutely no. This club has come on so far. How satisfied are you with, you've mentioned all the things off the field there as well, but in terms of the whole operation, how satisfied are you where Spennymoor lie in 2025 right now?
Yeah, we've touched on the first 8 years. You look at the second 8 years and you look and think, well, we had 1 year, 8 year ends this year, where Graham and the team will probably think there's a lifetime of kind of games still to play, which we know, and then you've got Wembley in May. But if you look at that kind of second 8 year period, 1 year we lost through COVID. Then you look at the other 6 years, we've always been top 10. So we haven't been outside the top 10. They've beaten MK Dons in the first round of the FA Cup. Jason took them to the quarter-final in Bromley and we got beat on a replay, but the trophy quarter-final. We lost in the playoffs on penalties against Chorley. We're now here again in the FA Trophy final. So even in that kind of 6 year, because this year hasn't ended in 1 year, there's always been something. So I think the second year is far harder, far more difficult, total different level. But, again, we're punching well above our weight.
How challenging was that COVID time? I arrived shortly after that and when things were starting to die down a little bit. But one of the things I got told was how supportive you were of the people around the club and the people who work for the club. And the supporters as well, by the way, because you made football as affordable as you possibly could, when they were coming back into football, didn't you? So how challenging were the aspects of that whole pandemic era?
Yeah, and what I'm not going to do is kind of dig any dirty laundry. You look, I don't do lots of interviews. I'm not on any social platforms. I'm a very private person, born and bred from East. Never forget your roots. What you see is what you get. But the last 5 years has been incredibly challenging, not just from a football side, but for my group of companies. I'm not going to get into politics on one area, but you can imagine there's been a lot of, 99% very supportive, 1% very critical, and this, that, and then it links into your football because it must be to do with football. And the truth is, I could have easily run my side of the story and went through exactly what did or what didn't happen to one of our businesses in the group. The rest of the business in the group have come thriving in different areas, but the one that didn't, I'll never raise that. That's been behind closed doors, dealt with in a professional way. But it was absolutely challenging for businesses. It was incredibly challenging for football clubs. We also got a COVID loan, like lots of non-league clubs did. That doesn't start getting repaid till next season. There's all sorts of debates in non-league football about, why these COVID loans shouldn't be repaid. You guys basically shut the country down, blah-de-blah. So there's a whole debate, but that again has to be factored into plans because you also have a big chunk of what you borrowed to start paying back from next year. So that's built into the business plans. So incredibly challenging, but it was incredibly challenging for everybody. The children, with the schools, the elderly, the whole thing was but it wasn't just about COVID because our businesses also went into the energy crisis, then you went in the cost of living. So there's been all sorts of other issues and, that happened on top of it. So I think, as a whole, football probably was missing, which is that release for everybody after they've had a week's work, or whether you're sitting in a workman's club having a debate and everybody knows best and they pick the team. And I always say, opinions are like backsides. Everybody has one. But at the same time, I think and I think we are starting to see some of that now with society and some of the challenges we see, and is some of that I think has followed COVID.
Yeah, and that commitment you had, as I mentioned there, just to, I think that the ticket prices and everything that you tried to alleviate the pressures for people at that time, didn't you?
And you've seen a lot of our strap lines, kind of pride of County Durham, but we have been the highest ranked County Durham team in the last 6 years, forgetting the year that ended. But at the same time, affordable for all was another one.
Yes.
The other thing we do here, it's kind of 15, 10 and 5. But also, I think people don't realise that we have over 700 seats. We don't charge for them. So there's clubs in the North East in lower leagues than us who are a league below us who were charging the same ticket price as us, and they charge £3 for a seat. In the Brewery Field, there's over 700 seats. We don't charge. People have been coming here for donkey's years. So it's a first come, first serve. The only time that becomes a bit more of a challenge is a segregated game. But it's absolutely key, and that's why as a club, whether it be the ladies, whether it be the prize money, the cup, the trophy, the youth programme, the community programme, everything you do, the sponsor partners, which we've got an incredible base of partners who support us enormously from the small to the large. We appreciate them all. It's so key that we have other revenue streams, because what we want to try and do is fill the ground, affordable, and bring it in, but at the same time it has to be in time. It's got to be a self-financing business and club that finds its level. And I think what we have done is all of the work around the infrastructure and everything with it is really, now there's no reason why this club, for whatever it is in the future, cannot be self-sustainable, because ultimately all the hard work and the infrastructure is built and we've got a good local base. But at what level, that will be a total different debate.